My name is Serena Blake. I am 33 years old. And the night of my sister's wedding, I learned something I had suspected for most of my life but had never been able to prove in a room full of witnesses. My mother had been saving that performance for years. I was standing under warm gold lighting in a ballroom at a cliffside resort in Laguna Beach, champagne glass in hand, trying to survive the reception without becoming the event. Then my mother turned from the family table, smiled in my direction with the particular smile she reserved for public corrections, and said, loudly enough for 3 nearby tables to hear, that she was simply grateful at least one of her daughters had grown into someone people could genuinely be proud of. A few people laughed. A few more pretended not to. But in a room that size, humiliation travels fast. She kept going. She picked apart my career, my independence, the life I had spent a decade building from nothing. She said if certain people had been involved in the wedding planning, the guests would probably be eating takeout from a parking lot. That line got the biggest laugh of the evening. I sat perfectly still. I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice or push back my chair or give her the dramatic reaction she had been angling for. I smiled, not warmly, not theatrically, just enough to signal that something had shifted, set my glass down, and said 5 words to a staff member passing nearby. Then I walked toward the exit. I want to know how far this story travels. If you had met my mother at a charity luncheon or a school fundraiser, you would have liked her immediately. Vivian Blake had perfect posture, a composed voice, and the kind of curated elegance that made people assume warmth simply because she looked refined. She knew how to make a room feel like it was being carefully tended. What she did not know how to do was love both of her daughters the same way. My younger sister Chloe was beautiful in the immediately visible way that made strangers notice her first. She was warm when it served her, effortlessly charming, and very good at giving our mother the particular kind of admiration that kept the peace at home. I was the harder child. I asked questions. I disagreed. I never learned how to make myself smaller simply to keep a room comfortable. By the time I was 16, the dynamic had been established and settled. Chloe was the daughter who reflected well. I was the daughter who required correction. My mother mocked the way I dressed, the choices I made, and above all the direction I chose for my career. When I was 20 and started with a small dessert cart at a weekend market in Santa Monica, because I needed money and because I loved the mechanics of events, the pressure, the precision. The way one perfect evening could feel effortless only when someone invisible had worked very hard behind the curtain, she called it cute. Then messy. Then embarrassing. I slept in my car twice during those first years. I burned my hands more times than I could count. I taught myself contract law from free online resources at 2 in the morning and learned payroll management on almost no sleep. I turned that cart into private dinner bookings, then brand launches, then wedding services, then a full hospitality company, Mercer House Hospitality Group, with commercial kitchens, a staff of 40, and vendor partnerships across Southern California. My mother told people I bounced around rich people's parties and called it a career. The final break came 6 years ago at a family dinner where she announced, in front of relatives, in the pleasant voice she used when she wanted cruelty to sound like observation, that Chloe was the only daughter she could trust with anything meaningful, because she knew how to live like a lady. I left that night and stopped calling. She told people I was dramatic. That was how our family worked. The person who caused the wound kept the reputation. The person who bled became the problem. When Chloe's wedding invitation arrived at my condo 6 weeks earlier, I assumed it was a mistake. It came on thick cream paper with a handwritten note tucked inside. She said she knew things had been broken for a long time. She said she did not want to begin her marriage with this distance between them. She said she missed me. I read it 3 times. Part of me wanted to believe she meant it. Part of me recognized it as a test I had not been given the terms for. I went anyway. The venue was stunning, ocean behind the altar, white roses, string quartet, candlelight timed for sunset. Chloe hugged me when I arrived, and for one moment she felt like my little sister again. My father gave me an awkward side embrace and asked how business was going in the tone people use when they are not certain the answer still applies. My mother kissed the air beside my cheek and said she was relieved I had chosen something tasteful to wear. Not kind. Not warm. Just relieved I wouldn't embarrass her visually. My place card was at table 19. Not with the family. Not near the wedding party. At a table of distant acquaintances and guests from my new brother-in-law's side who had no idea who I was. When one of them asked how I knew the bride, I said I was her sister. The woman blinked as if she had misheard me. I smiled and let it go. The slights throughout the evening were small enough to deny and clear enough to feel deliberate. That was always my mother's skill. She preferred precision over drama, until drama served her better. Then came the toast. She stood, glass raised, and told the room how proud she was that one of her daughters had built a life with grace, stability, and genuine achievement. Then she turned her body just enough for everyone to follow her gaze toward me. She said some people confused being loud and independent with being accomplished. She said she was grateful the wedding had been left in capable hands, because if certain people had been near the planning, everyone would likely be eating takeout from a parking lot. 300 guests. Warm lighting. Music still playing softly in the background. And my mother standing there with the satisfied expression of a woman who had just finished a job she had been rehearsing for years. I stood up slowly. I set my napkin beside my plate. I met my mother's eyes, not with anger, not with tears, just with the particular steadiness of someone who has just noticed something she cannot unknow. I said, "Congratulations on the perfect evening." Then I turned and walked away from table 19. As I crossed toward the side exit, I passed a service station set behind a tall floral wall. One of the staff members glanced up, and I recognized her. Not vaguely. Precisely. She had worked 2 high-profile charity events for one of our affiliate teams earlier that year, before an acquisition had brought her company under our operating umbrella. I stopped. She looked startled, then shifted into the respectful composure employees use when they unexpectedly encounter senior leadership. I looked past her at the insulated transport cases stacked neatly in the service corridor. On the side of the nearest one, printed in clean navy lettering, was a logo I had approved in a boardroom 3 months earlier. White Harbor Events. A boutique catering company we had acquired as part of a broader expansion. A company now fully owned by Mercer House Hospitality Group. My company. My mother had just publicly humiliated me, in a room of 300 people, in front of her daughter's wedding guests, at a reception being catered by a business she did not know belonged to me. For exactly 1 second, I almost laughed. Instead, I stepped away from the corridor, took out my phone, and called my chief operating officer. She answered on the second ring. I asked one question: is the White Harbor team at this evening's event operating under our current authority or still under legacy management? She said ours. Then she asked why. I looked through the ballroom doors at my mother, still standing near the family table, still wearing the satisfied expression of a woman who believed she had just won something important. I said, because ownership was publicly insulted by the mother of the bride in front of witnesses. Pause all service, have the floor manager document the incident, and poll the team. There was a brief silence. She knew me well enough to understand I did not issue that instruction lightly. Are you certain? Completely, I said. I handed the phone to the floor manager and gave her 5 words. Cancel everything and pull the team. She took the phone, listened to my COO confirm the order, and the color left her face in a single second. Radios clicked on. Doors opened. Staff changed direction. And while the band kept playing, and the guests kept talking, the machinery holding that beautiful evening together quietly began to disassemble itself. I did not walk back in. I did not take a microphone. I did not announce who I was or what had just happened. I simply stood near the side exit and watched $300 a plate disappear from the evening in real time. The main course never arrived. The dessert display was covered instead of served. Guests began checking their watches. The room's energy shifted from celebration into confusion, then into something quieter and more unsettled. My mother's face, when the venue manager finally reached her and explained what had happened, changed in a way I had never seen it change before. The composure disappeared. What replaced it was something she had always worked very hard to keep people from seeing. She looked at me across the room like a woman who had just realized she had spent the entire evening operating on incorrect information. I left before she reached me. The legal back and forth that followed lasted several weeks. Their attorney demanded a full refund. We offered 50% after hard costs. We required a non-disparagement agreement and a release of all claims in return. They signed. My mother could no longer tell her version of the story without violating a legal agreement. That was the consequence she had not planned for. Not noise. Not confrontation. Not a scene at the family table. Just the quiet, irreversible reality of what happens when you publicly humiliate the wrong person, and discover, too late, that she had the authority to end your evening with a single phone call.